All right, Joshua, we've been talking about our favorite college towns, the top college towns in the Big Ten Conference, but actually College Football Select recently ranked their top college towns in all of America. Now, Ann Arbor didn't come in at number 1, but pretty damn close. They came in at number 2. And when you look at the Big Ten Conference, actually, Big Ten has 3 of the top 5, and really 4 of the top 10 if you include future Big Ten members' hometown, Eugene, Oregon, with the Oregon Ducks. So Big Ten's well represented, but I'm looking to see, where's Columbus? Joshua, was that a misprint, or where's Ohio State?
Well, good for you, first off, celebrating second place, embracing the Michigan way. I appreciate that out of you.
Yeah.
The idea that Columbus is not on here, I think, just speaks to the misconception of Columbus as a city. Because they're like, oh, it's such a big city and all this other stuff, and it's not really a college town. Take the Buckeyes out of Columbus, and you tell me what that town really is. Everybody is a Buckeye there, period, point blank. Like, yeah, I'm sorry that it's not your cup of tea and it doesn't have all that charm and everything else that people like. It's literally one of the greatest cities in the country. And if you don't want to say it's a great college town, it's perfectly fine. It's the second biggest financial engine of the Midwest. I'll take that. Perfectly fine with me.
Good. You're talking about everything that doesn't have to do with being a great college town, financial engine. No. That's not college town. Big city. That doesn't mean college town. The spirit is what it is. That's why Madison, Wisconsin's number 1. Michigan's number 2.
Some of y'all wish you could be the financial engine
right
that
here.
Columbus is. That's the real issue. It sounds like a lot of envy, jealousy.
Oh, man, you got me fired up. I can't wait to get into some of this stuff with you today. We got some good debates lined up. And he doesn't need an introduction, but this is my co-host, Joshua Perry, former Buckeye and NFL linebacker, former team captain, national champion. The list goes on and on.
All-American Mackey Award-winning tight end, captain for the Michigan Wolverines, Jake Butt, joining me here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. My goodness, it's going to be a good day, man.
I'm going to shake your hand because I need to let you know I care about you because I'm about to tear his ass up today. Okay? Guys, as a reminder, we are fully interactive, so you see that QR code? Make sure you scan it and vote. Who is the best quarterback in the Big Ten Conference? J.J. McCarthy's got a big lead. Not so fast to Tua Tagovailoa. Scan that code, vote on it. We need your input. And, of course, join us on YouTube where we are active in the chat. You comment, we listen. Again, this is your show. This is our show. But as promised, there's a debate that's been brewing really for a few weeks now. But we're talking about the Penn State offense. And I'm going to let you have the floor because you don't believe what I believe. Is the Penn State offense legit?
No, not right now. And I usually don't have the note card. I brought it out for today. If I told you Penn State was 10th in the Big Ten in yards per play, would you say that is a national championship offense? Because I certainly wouldn't. Behind teams like Michigan State and Rutgers. What if I told you they were 10th in yards per pass or 9th in yards per rush? How about tied for last in 20-plus yard plays behind a team like Iowa? We get on this show every day and rag on Iowa. Penn State is last behind them in explosive 20-yard-plus plays. I'm not saying it won't get better, but as I look at it right now, I'm not getting all the hype around this Penn State offense. It's just not getting the job done for me.
Okay, listen, there's such thing as context to these stats.
Let's give context. I'm glad you want to do that.
Please, there's context to the stats. You can say 20-yard, but what about 10-yard? When you want to talk about 10-yard run, you would agree the Buckeye offense is explosive. When you talk about 10-yard runs, Penn State still not great, but they're the middle of the pack. Ohio State, on the other hand, is struggling, yet we still think their offense is explosive.
What do you mean by struggling? Because when you break it down on a percentage basis, about 9% of each team's runs are in that category that you talked about. It's the fact that Penn State's run the ball almost twice as much as Ohio State has is how we get to the sheer numbers. But if we want to do context, I like to deal in percentages because it gives me the better idea.
Okay, context, too, is the fact of Penn State, where they've been at in terms of who they've played this year. They've been blowing teams out. So what's then asked of your offense is to run the ball and run out the clock. The other context of this is important, too. You have a young quarterback in Drew Aller who I know Penn State believes. They think the world of this guy. They think he has all the potential in the world. They also have one of the best defenses in the country. So here, let me just take you into an offensive meeting. What you're saying to your young quarterback is, hey, be smart with the football. you can only lose games by taking too much risk. Just continue to do what you do, which is be smart off play action. He's been excellent off play action, and limit those turnovers. Listen, they've taken shots. They've taken shots. The Northwestern game, they ran a double move. It's right in the hands of Cephas, and he drops it. Yeah. They are succeeding with 10-yard runs, which, again, I go back to last year and say Singleton is absolutely capable. He's got that home run power. It's just a matter, but you can say he's capable.
I'm not going to doubt that he's capable of any of this. It's funny you bring up Drew Aller. I went and started digging, pulled up some stats off Pro Football Focus. So out of 12 quarterbacks in the Big Ten that have thrown the ball at least 100 times this year, Drew Aller is 11th out of 12 in big-time throws. So the throws that you have to throw in a tight window, when you come under pressure, you can grade those. He's got the second fewest out of quarterbacks with 100 or more attempts on the year. How about the lowest percentage of air yards out of 12 quarterbacks with at least 100 attempts on the season? Like, the shortest depth of target out of those 12 quarterbacks. He's not pushing the football down the field. This is not what their offense is doing. They have a governor on him. This guy, and he played well early on in the year. You're not going to hear me argue anything about that. Tell me about what he did against Illinois when they had a front seven that was firing him up. 48.5% passing. Like, that's all I'm getting at, is I'm not saying that they'll be bad the whole season, but for the hype right now, I need to see the substance behind it.
The hype right now has to do to the context of the team, though. What you're asking Drew Aller to do is play complementary football with that talented defense. They're going to take the ball away. They're going to give you short fields. So what you're telling your young quarterback is listen, we are not asking you to do too much right now. We don't want you to be USC. We want you to play smart, disciplined football. And that means being quality in your underneath routes, the 5 to 10 yards. Eventually, they're going to have to open it up. Absolutely, eventually they will. He has the arm talent to do it. But right now, that is not what is being asked of Drew Aller.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 45 more plays of offense than anybody else in the Big Ten. They had 97 against Iowa, only came up with 31 points. There's going to come a time where their defense meets an offense that can actually move the football, and their offense is going to have to bail them out. And as of right now, I do not feel confident in their ability to do so.
The week to do that is against Ohio State, where they're going to be aggressive and there's going to be opportunity. The week to not do that is against Iowa, who makes a living of taking the ball away, and they play conservative defense. So that's what we'll watch out for. Going forward, I agree they need to see growth, but it's not as bad as what you're making it out to be, Joshua.
10th in yards per play doesn't sound like it's great either. But we got to move on here and get to a little mic check across the Big Ten. And we head to Iowa City first, where their fears are confirmed. Cade McNamara out for the season with an ACL injury. So now the Hawkeyes are going to turn to Deacon Hill as their quarterback. And for Kirk Ferentz, just a small change for the team.
That's probably the biggest thing for him is, getting in games and actually playing, or scrimmage situations, those types of deals. So, it doesn't get much more live than it did Saturday. And I thought he, did a good job managing things and making good decisions for us. And now it's, all about continuing to do that and take steps forward.
I mean, this is something that you never want to celebrate. Cade McNamara is a guy who's played a lot of football in this conference, and he's down for the year. But is there any optimism that you can find surrounding the Iowa Hawkeyes offense?
My level of optimism doesn't change in this scenario, to be honest. I love Cade. Listen, I was friends with him when he was at Michigan. I believe in his leadership. I think that there's something to be said about that locker room. But my optimism doesn't change, frankly, because I think this is beyond Cade. I look at that Michigan State last week, Michigan State game. How many times does a ball hit your guys in the chest and they drop it? That's something you can control. The offensive line, that's been the bread and butter of success of Iowa football teams. What am I watching? I haven't seen anything. They've been beat up in the backfield. Listen, Deacon Hill, it's your time to step up. But frankly, it's on the other 10 guys around him, and it's on Brian Ferentz to start scheming up some easier plays.
Yeah, I'm there with you. And to defend Brian Ferentz, which I'm going to rarely do on this show, he can scheme up all he wants, but if guys can't block and guys can't catch, it doesn't matter. And I think that's going to be their biggest problem. You cannot get in the way of having success regardless of what your coach is calling. It's the fundamental things that really count. You were great with that, right? Like, you did the little things.
Yeah.
You can't do the big things until you do the little things, and I think that's where they're going to need to improve. But let's flip it over to the Illini. They are off to a very disappointing 0-2 start in Big Ten play, and Brett Bielema knows the reason why.
And the key ingredient to losing that we stress to our players from the first day I got here to where we are today are penalties, mental errors, and turnovers. And the NCAA because the mental error is not really a statistic in the NCAA football manual, but penalties and turnovers are, and we're not very good in those two. So I think our guys understand the importance of that. The second thing we probably pride ourselves on is being tough, smart, dependable, and that has to be a resilient part of our program. The way we recruit, the way we coach, the way that we obviously play the game is a big part of that, and I think those two elements right there together are really what's missing from us.
Do you agree with Coach here? Do you think that penalties and turnovers are their biggest issue?
Absolutely. I think talent masks some of those things, right? When you have elite talent, you can mask some of the penalty issues and the turnover issues and the mental errors, as he's saying. But listen, that's just not where Illinois is as a team right now. All their talent's currently playing on Sundays, right? So those are things that you can control. The mental errors. Well, what did you do? What do you do throughout the week? The turnovers. What are you watching on tape? What is being emphasized? And the penalties certainly are something that's within Illinois' control. They are not good enough from a talent standpoint to overcome the self-inflicted wounds. That's something that they can change within their own control that would allow them to be more successful.
Yeah, I like this talent thing that you got on, though, because I think one of the things that Brett Bielema probably prides himself on, where he's been really good throughout his career, is talent development. He's not going to recruit the best guys, but Devin Witherspoon, to your point, that was a 3-star guy coming out of high school. So to me, I feel like there is a deficit in development. They had a very experienced, kind of top-heavy, senior-laden team. A lot of guys left for the draft. Some guys couldn't return because they exhausted eligibility. I think that portion matters. Now, again, you said it. When you're that young, you can't make the mistakes. But I think there's some development that needs to happen for some of the players on this roster for them to continue taking steps forward. But we're going to take our first break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Now, coming up, we're breaking down the matchup between the Terps and the Buckeyes. Big Ten Game of the Week. Find out who has the edge on the field. That's in just a few. And remember, stick around after Red Corner, Blue Corner as the focus shifts to the SEC. The rivals down south, guys, will sing the praises of Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Woof! Check it out right here on Stadium.
All right, welcome back. Red corner, blue corner. I'm Jake Butt. He's Joshua Perry. And we have an exciting game this week. It's our Big Ten game of the week. Joshua, we got Ohio State versus the Maryland Terrapins. And let's go down. Let's dive into this game a little bit. Sure. Playing a game of our own. Who has the edge?
Yes.
And traditionally, I think everyone would just say the quarterback battle goes to Ohio State, but don't sleep on Taulia Tagovailoa. Joshua, kick it off with us. Who has the edge at quarterback in this matchup?
It's going to be Taulia Tagovailoa. Might as well just go ahead and check that one right now. Listen, he is a guy who has a ton of experience here in this conference, and he's played in pretty big games before. Come up short, so you know he's going to be motivated. The way that he can find and target some of his weapons downfield, and we'll talk about those guys here in a sec, I think is really impressive. He's got the ability to extend the play, but when I really break it down, I think Kyle McCord has made those strides, but the experience is something that you cannot account for.
Look, I look at this and I say this is a career-defining opportunity for Taulia Tagovailoa. He's in the record book for the Big Ten Conference in a number of career stats, but he's missing that big win over Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Well, the opportunity this week is to beat Ohio State. And you mentioned the weapons. Maryland has some weapons, but certainly Ohio State has some weapons. So let's take it there. When Ohio State has the football, who has the edge?
Look, Maryland is much improved on defense. I like what they have going on all three levels, particularly in their secondary, their back seven. Their linebacker play has been really good, but they've been able to take the football away via interceptions. A guy like Tarheeb Still, Bo Braid, those are names that you should be looking for, but I'm still going to give it to Ohio State for this one. And the reason why is, although Kyle McCord is still developing, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got Emeka Egbuka. Julian Fleming is finally coming into his own. I think Ohio State has a couple of dangerous tight ends there in Cade Stover and G. Scott Jr. And then you look at the running game. Travion Henderson looks more like the running back we saw in his freshman year than the guy we saw a year ago. So I like this when OSU has the ball for them to have the advantage in this game.
Here's one thing I'm looking at, because I feel McCord, here's an analogy for you. You ever go to the gun range?
Sure.
And you can hit the bullseye or you can completely miss the target. That's been McCord's season. There's been times where he's hit the bullseye. There's been times when he's been completely off target. The difference in this game is when Maryland's on defense, as you previewed, when they have opportunities to take the ball away, that secondary doesn't drop passes. So this is a big week for Maryland's defense. They're going to need all guys on both sides of the ball, but if they want to have a shot here, they're going to need to take the ball away, as they've done just about as good as anyone in the country. And if they do take the ball away, what does that mean? It's back to Maryland's offense getting the ball. So let's kick it there then, Joshua. When Maryland has the ball, who's got the edge?
So Ohio State defensively, one of the top units in the country statistically right now. I do not think they have been challenged, but I like the way they've stepped up on the interior of their defensive line with a guy like Mike Hall Jr. I like what they've done in their secondary too. And we were talking about it before the show, but they've got some dogs back there. Maryland, though, they have not seen an offensive skill group like what Maryland has. Guys like Ja'Shawn Jones and Ty Felton, Corey Dyches, the tight end, who's really like a big wide receiver. I like what they can do. We mentioned Taulia Tagovailoa and all the skills that he has. I think they're better across the offensive line here, and it's the idea of facing that shock and that challenge for Ohio State. Coming off of a bye week, their defense may be susceptible this week.
Okay, so who are you picking then? Are you picking Maryland or Ohio State?
Oh, no, Maryland for sure.
Okay, so you're picking Maryland. Let me get you right there. So you got Maryland.
Yes, thank you.
How about this? We got the defensive guy picking two offenses. I'm actually kicking it with Ohio State's defense here.
Look at you, man. Picking the defenses.
Big time step. Last year, Maryland had 8 explosives against this Buckeye defense. 8 in one game. This year, Ohio State's defense has only given up 9 total. Significant improvement, and as you mentioned, with all those weapons for the Terps, the Buckeyes are going to need to show up and be very, very disciplined. Now, we talk about analytics at times, Joshua.
Yep.
I know it's a little subjective when it comes to the game of football. One thing that cannot be denied is turnovers.
Yeah.
If you have a significant advantage in the turnover battle, your likelihood of winning increases. So this is how we'll wrap up here. Turnover battle. Who has the edge between either team?
Yeah, so Maryland is a team that I believe is second in the nation right now in turnover margin. So they've taken the football away. They've done a good job of protecting the football. Taulia Tagovailoa, though, does have a history of putting the ball in bad places. He's done it a few times this year. I think he only has 3 interceptions on the season up to this point. So he's avoided some of those plays. Kyle McCord, on the other hand, he has thrown some balls that should have been intercepted. The last drive against against Notre Dame. I know all the credit we give him. There was an interception that was in defender's hands that was completely dropped.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State understands, though, the importance of winning the turnover battle. Where they are offensively, I think this defense has its eye on being more disruptive. And ultimately, Maryland does have this history in bigger games of giving the football away. I think about the Iowa game a couple of years ago where Maryland came out the gates, they were smoking hot, and then they give the ball away about 6 times. I'm going to go Ohio State here for the turnover battle.
Okay, this is the one out of all these things showing up here. I think this is the storyline that will tell the outcome of this game. Look, Ohio State is a heavy favorite, but if Maryland can do what they've done up until this point in the season, which, as you mentioned, second biggest turnover margin to start the season, if Maryland continues that, they actually win this game. They don't just keep it close, they win this game. So turnover battle, I'm going to look at the history. Ohio State, that's not been their MO these past few years. Maryland wins the turnover battle this week, and I think that at least gets them to keep it close. The bigger the margin, though, the more and more I like the Terps.
It would be an interesting one, right? Like, yeah. It's the fundamentals of football. Take care of the ball, you win the game.
That in context is, this is a big week for McCord because, hey, you're just putting notches on your belt. So either way, look at this, a nice balanced board there, Joshua. This has been who has the edge. We'll look at some games a little bit further here in a second.
I personally think every SEC team should be ranked. I guarantee you there's some teams that don't want to play them that are ranked. I mean, I literally have no idea what you're referencing because every team we play in the SEC is good enough to beat us. And whether they're ranked or not, I could care less.
This is the most insecure thing I've ever heard Kirby Smart say. Ever heard him say in his life. Yes, people are scared to play Vanderbilt. Nice one. South Carolina, oh my gosh, I am shaking in my boots. Auburn, who you struggled with, my friend. I bet you there are teams everywhere scared to play him. Ask Penn State about him the last couple years. Were they scared to play Auburn? Doesn't look like they were to me. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's a cope from a coach because his team hasn't looked good. 21 points he gave up to UAB. Why don't you rank them as well, Kirby?
This is a bad look, right? Like this is a comment you don't say because it shows some weakness.
It does,
It shows some weakness. You're projecting. It's insecure. And really, this gives us all the ammo we need as we've been debating the Big Ten versus the SEC. You just laid it out. Look, Vanderbilt, their stadium's under construction in the middle of the game. What's intimidating about that? No one is feared playing Vandy. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, we could go down the list. Arkansas, I mean, 0-2 in conference. They're 2-3 overall. Nobody's fearing them. Mississippi State is a bad football team. Tennessee, fraudulent. Florida, very fraudulent. Missouri, congratulations on your 5-0 start. Right? Like, I don't know if there are a lot of people that are fearful of Missouri. LSU at 23 with 2 losses. I'm going to say it again. They quit in prime time. We watched that. They gave up 1,000,000 yards to Ole Miss. I'm supposed to be scared of that. So if you have an offense that has a pulse, just a heartbeat, and I got LSU on the schedule, I'm running it up. 50 points. 50 burger right away.
No, Joshua, help me make. No conference gets more credit for
the bare minimum
losing to each other than the SEC, and that's one thing that I just can't make sense of at this point. LSU's 3-2, as you mentioned. Folded a couple times, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Why is that? Why did we give them credit? They shouldn't be ranked. And he's talking about teams worse than LSU being ranked.
No, they beat Grambling. That's why they should be ranked. That's what happened is they beat Grambling, and so now they deserve to be ranked. It is crazy, right? Like to lose games and then people are still like, well, you know, they lost to Ole Miss, and it's like, I don't think Ole Miss is really that good. Like, what are we over here talking about? Like this. Oh, it's the most frustrating thing. And like for Kirby to even suggest that every team should be ranked in that conference. Yeah. Like, okay, great.
Here's the funny thing as we look at this graphic is that's Brian Kelly, the head coach at LSU. He leaves Notre Dame to say, all right, it's going to be easier to win down there. We're going to recruit better players. We're going to have more resources. I'm going to leave Notre Dame to have more success at LSU. What's his record in his past 8 games? 4-4.
Ooh,
wait a second now, Brian Kelly. You can't get it done.
Oh, man. I'll save Brian Kelly for a different time because I've got thoughts on that man in general. But to hear Kirby Smart come out here and talk like this, right? It shows because his team has struggled this year. It doesn't feel like the same dominant team that we had seen in the past. I'm not exactly sure that they had given up 21 points to just about anybody on their schedule last year until they played the SEC championship game, and they did it to a team like UAB. It's okay for people to admit that the SEC might be just a little bit down. I would go out on a limb and say that a lot of college football is down right now.
Sure.
But you still got a shot, but let's be real with ourselves.
And no one's saying, there's teams, conferences that are down there and saying that comment. When a coach makes that comment, you have to ask yourself why. I think he realizes this Georgia Bulldogs team doesn't have the juice that they had the 2 years prior.
What a shame. All right, that'll do it for us on Red Corner, Blue Corner. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.